You know, people so slam dunked on the concrete, on the floor. This is how the man-made systems deal with the weak. Which one do you think is more free? Is it America or basically what Islam teaches? Alright, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. This is Sheikh Al-Sahih with another Ayat 3 show. Today we're going to deal with 3 questions. Number 1, is protest haram? Number 2, the issue of free mixing during protests. And number 3, which one is more free, America or Islam? So let's start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're going to start with the video here with Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem. Again, with all due respect, we're going to listen and we're going to see what his view is, and we're going to criticize it as needed.
Now, oppression, transgression, dhulm is being inflicted in so many places, in so many countries. Protests, demonstrations, and the likes are not part of Islam. None of the Salaf had ever done such a thing.
Protests, as he's saying, are not part of Islam, and none of the Salaf have done such a thing. Let's evaluate this statement, because to be honest, you know, it's totally surprising that he's saying the Salaf didn't do this. What is the Salaf? The Salaf is either defined by the ulama, either the Sahaba radiallahu anhum only, or the first 3 generations, maybe 4. And there's a difference in opinion about that because of the hadith that says 3 or 4 in some narrations. طيب, let's start with the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Did Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, did he ever demonstrate himself? Did he organize a demonstration? And to be honest, from the seerah, we know that the Rasul ﷺ protested Quraysh all the time. I mean, a protest doesn't necessarily need to be hundreds of people. One person could be a demonstrator, one person could be a protester, and the Rasul ﷺ protested Quraysh all the time. Like the Rasul ﷺ, his whole life was a protest to Quraysh. It's like you can't, you know, worship the idols. You can't worship the idols. Here's the Quran. Here's this. Here's that. Don't you call this a protest? Does it really matter if a protest is a group protest versus an individual protest? And if it did, definitely doesn't. Why didn't you differentiate, Sheikh? And again, with all due respect to Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem, but to be honest, the Rasul ﷺ not only protested most of his life against Quraysh in Mecca, he ﷺ organized a protest where he lined up the Sahaba radiallahu anhum after a few years of Nubuwah, one with the headed by Umar al-Khattab and one headed by Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, and they circulated the Kaaba chanting, you know, La ilaha illallah, chanting takbirat, chanting. If this is not a demonstration, what is a demonstration? You see what I'm saying? This is from the seerah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, did they ever protest? I mean, I can, on top of my head, recollect 2, 3, 4 different incidents where the Sahaba radiallahu anhum not only protested, but their protesting was acknowledged, and the protest actually worked, which changed the behavior of the ruler. And thirdly, the protesting was encouraged by some of the biggest leaders of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Specifically here I'm referring to Umar al-Khattab. So let's start with a few incidents. Number 1, the very popular incident that was narrated in the Siyar and the Hadith. During the Khilafah of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he got a bunch of clothings and pieces of fabric from Yemen, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So he distributed those pieces across everybody, you know, maybe like a meter square per person, whatever it is, like a specific size. And then when he came to do a speech or a khutbah later on after this distribution, he was wearing, a cloth made of this fabric that is basically way more bigger than what he distributed. And he started his speech basically, he's like, Ya ayyuhan nas, isma'u wa ati'u, O people, basically listen and obey. And then one person from the crowd, one of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, says like, La sam'a wa la ta'a, there's no listening and there's no obedience. So Umar was surprised. He didn't tell him, Astaghfirullah, how come you're protesting Amir al-Mu'mineen? How come you're demonstrating or objecting to the leaders of the believers? He didn't say that. He says, what's up, man? What's going on? He says, you gave us such and such size, and we see that you've gave yourself way more than what you've given us. Look at the accountability. Look at the protesting of a decision by the Khalifa of the Muslimin. What did Umar al-Khattab do? Did he smack him? Did he reprimand him? Did he imprison him? Did he say haram? No. He said, Ya Abdullah, come over and speak on my behalf. His son, Abdullah ibn Umar, radiallahu anhuma. So Abdullah says basically, I gave my share to my father because my father is a tall man. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't go and say, look, see? He didn't go and basically, offend the protester. Why? because protesting is not just halal, it is fard sometimes when you're seeing evil. Why? Because the Rasul ﷺ told us, من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه. The Rasul ﷺ told us in a hadith that's sahih and very well known, whomever of you, doesn't matter who you are, a man, a woman, a kid, an adult, a scholar, a jahil, anybody who sees a munkar should change it with his hand. And if you can't change it with your hand, because with your hand means being an authority, if you're not an authority, then you should change it with your tongue. What is changing it with your tongue? What does that mean? That means speaking against it. What does that mean? That means protesting that specific situation until it's changed. Anyway, a second popular story from the seerah is the time when Umar al-Khattab limited or capped the muhur, the mahr, the dowry of women that they can ask for. He's like, okay, look, maybe only $20,000. That's the limit. You can't ask for more. And then one of the sahabiyat radiallahu anha came to Umar al-Khattab in public. Says, Ya Umar, where in the book of Allah did Allah give you the right to limit our dowry? And Umar al-Khattab took a second and he was like, whoa, this is a good question. Did he reprimand her? Did he offend her? Did he say it's haram to protest Amir al-Mu'mineen in public? No. He said, صدقت امرأة وأخطأ عمر. A woman is truthful and Umar was mistaken. Amir al-Mu'mineen was mistaken. He changed his behavior. He removed the cap and the mahr. That's number 2. Number 3 is Abu Dharr al-Ghafari radiallahu anhu protesting against Uthman bin Affan and against the other Sahaba radiallahu anhum in the government of Uthman and against some of the governors of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhum in Sham and many other places. And then actually mobilizing people to protest against the way these governors and these administrators and these political figures in the government of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, how they're spending the money of the public money. He says this is a public money and you cannot spend it in certain ways. Did people basically come and tell him what you're doing is haram? No. There was a difference in opinion. Uthman bin Affan thought this is maybe an okay way to spend it. Abu Bakr basically saw a different way. Imagine basically this expenditure was on haram, like it's happening today. No. It was just different opinion. It's expenditure on the halal, but in different ways. One way Uthman saw it to be appropriate. And one way Abu Dharr al-Ghafari said, no, it's not appropriate because we're supposed to be giving to the poor more than, doing certain projects. So, and he had the right to protest. In this case, I would say basically the right to protest here is permissible. It's not necessarily a fard, you know what I'm saying? But he's protecting the public money of the ummah. When we tell people don't protest, what's going to happen? Evil is going to get encouraged. Evil is going to get protected. You see what I'm saying? Ya akhi, Wallah al-Azim, you should apologize to the ummah. You should apologize to the ummah about this misinformation. You tell me it's not from Islam. What Islam are you following, ya akhi? What Islam? What many people, unfortunately, like yourself, may Allah forgive you, do is just basically to put down this greatest faridah of protesting against evil. You give it million different excuses why it shouldn't happen. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us a great nation because of it. And if today we're not a great nation because we're not doing it, because people like yourself are demoralizing people from protesting. Subhanallah. You need to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi. Wallahi, you must fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remove this video and go and apologize and tell people the truth about the Salaf protesting and the Sahaba protesting and the Rasul ﷺ protesting and Allah ordering us to protest. This is the haqq and this is the truth. This is the haqq and this is the truth. May Allah forgive you, ya akhi, Allah. May Allah forgive you. Let's go now, inshaAllah. I hope this is clear. Actually, there's maybe one issue that basically keeps coming up, which is the issue of free mixing during demonstrations.
Some would argue and say, okay, Sheikh, the protests we're talking about is in the West, where the Muslim ruler does not exist. So what you're saying is correct with Muslim rulers. But what about a kafir country? And what about if the kafir ruler himself allowed us to protest and said that this is part of your constitution and your civil rights? This is an issue of dispute. If the kafir ruler allows it, the laws of the country allow it, and it is most likely nothing negative would happen, it's an issue of dispute. I personally am inclined to say no.
because this includes free mixing between men and women.
The issue of free mixing during demonstrations is like speaking about TVs and laptops and technology. Is like, well, can you free mix through these things? Yes. Can you do haram through these things? Yes. Can you chat with your laptop with another person from the opposite gender that you have that are non-mahram? Yes. So the laptop becomes haram, ya akhi. So if people do haram in a demonstration, doesn't mean that demonstration is haram. This is the ABCs of fiqh, ya akhi. You're giving fatwas left and right. Wallahi, on the internet, you can't even differentiate the ABCs of Islam. يا رجل يعني اتق الله والله العظيم. اتق الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Let's move now to the last subject in this video, inshallah. And we're going to deal with how America and the Biden administration have dealt with the protesters. So we've seen them basically getting beaten up, smashed. People so slam dunked on the concrete, on the floor by the police forces. Batons and pepper spray and whatever it is. Some people maybe got shot. This is how the man-made systems deal with the weak. We've said 1 billion times that Islam is a global universal movement for justice and peace. But people need to realize the real Islamic values that can change the world to be a better place for everybody. Muslims, non-Muslims, whites and blacks, doesn't matter who you are. Islam is that universal movement for justice, for universal justice. Let's start with a video from Biden himself, okay?
We've all seen the images, and they put to the test two fundamental American principles. Excuse me. The first is the right to free speech and for people to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. The second is the rule of law. Both must be upheld. We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But, neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points.
So there's always a but, right? This is a problem. The protesters were crushed, they were beaten up, they're smashed. Some of them basically slam dunked or slammed on the concrete. What is he talking about? This is the freedom of America? This is the freedom that you're proud of? This is the liberty that you always basically babble about? I don't know, man. This guy looks like a mummy anyway. And you better basically go review your constitution because it doesn't make sense. What's happening to the protesters is pure evil. You're silencing them because your government doesn't want to hear it. And you're spying on all these people. And in Islam, for example, it's haram to spy on anybody, period. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Do not spy on people. And you're not supposed to be harming anybody. لَا ضَرَرَ وَلَا ضِرَارَ. You're not supposed to inflict harm on nobody. And look at these protesters. They're peaceful protesters. They have their tents. And your police forces come and smashing them. Is this America? Is this the freedom that you're talking about? To be honest, Islam is the force of justice. In Islam, protesting is encouraged by Amir al-Mu'mineen, by the leaders of the believers. And we'll give you an example where Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, one time he was sitting with his cabinet, the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and he asked him this question. He says, ماذا تفعلون إن ترخصتوا في بعض الأمر أو ما كنتم فاعلين? What would you do basically if I started moving away from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the law of the divine? So nobody answered because they thought it was a rhetorical question. Everybody knows. And it's like, this is Umar al-Khattab anyway. He's not going to do that. So he repeated it twice or 3 times. This hadith was narrated by Imam al-Bukhari in his Tarikh al-Kabir on the authority of al-Bashir ibn Sa'd. Al-Bashir ibn Sa'd, he says, لو فعلت ذلك لقومناك تقويم القدح. That we would straighten you up like we straighten our arrows. That's how this is what we would do. This is Islam. Islam is a movement for global justice. It's a movement for global peace. How can you attain that without a vision for a better human life? Which one do you think is more free? Is it America or basically what Islam teaches? It teaches people to actually protest against injustice. And we've given a million examples from the Sahaba and Tabi'een. Definitely it's Islam. But again, sadly, the media has a job. that's been assigned by President Biden and the previous presidents of the United States to demonize Islam and to make Islam look bad. Anyway, barakallahu feekum for watching, guys, and don't forget to subscribe and like the channel, inshallah, and leave your comments under this beautiful video, and we'll see you, inshallah, next week with another I3 show. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.